Myself, Dr. Sarita Bang, and welcome, dear freshers, to your college life, and welcome to the world of English literature. This poem, which is prescribed for BA Part 1, is the first poem in your syllabus. And whenever we talk about English literature, one prominent name which comes to our mind is William Shakespeare. Before explaining the poem and telling you about the poem, let me tell you about William Shakespeare. Poet and dramatist, he was born at Stratford-on-Avon. Shakespeare was also an actor, moved to London fairly early in his career. He was born in 1564 and died in 1616. He is better known by his plays. Plays means dramas, and in an overall sense, identified with the greatness of Elizabethan age. He wrote sonnets as well as full-length poems. His early poems were circulated privately amongst friends before being published. The English sonnet, which has a different rhyme scheme from the Petrarchan sonnet, is also known as the Shakespearean sonnet. Now, let me tell you something about a sonnet. Sonnet is actually a poem of 14 lines. And the challenge of writing a sonnet lies in the fact that the theme has to be introduced, developed, and concluded within these 14 lines. And sonnets, which are ordinarily of two kinds, the Petrarchan and the Shakespeare. Petrarchan sonnet is also known as the Italian sonnet, which was originally written by Petrarch and is known as the Petrarchan sonnet. It has two main parts, the octave and the sestet, respectively, consisting of 8 and 6 lines. Octave means a stanza consisting of 8 lines, and sestet means a stanza consisting of 6 lines. The Shakespearean sonnet, on the other hand, also known as the English sonnet, because it was popularized by Shakespeare, it is known as the Shakespearean sonnet. It has 3 stanzas or quatrains, that is of 4 lines each, and a concluding couplet. And the meter is iambic pentameter. When we do a separate lecture on literary terms, we would go into details and explain a little bit more about sonnets. And now let us continue the video by explaining the poem itself. This sonnet, "Shall I compare thee to a summer's day," is one of the most acclaimed of all the 154 sonnets written by William Shakespeare. They were first published in 1609. Sonnet 18 is a typical English sonnet or Shakespearean sonnet and one of the most famous lyric poems in English. This sonnet should not be taken entirely in isolation, as it has been linked to the previous 17 sonnets. That is 1st to 17. This is the 18th, also called as the procreation sonnets, believed to be addressed to a young man named W.H., whose identity remains a mystery. The quest for having a child in an attempt to preserve the beauty of the young man, which Shakespeare argued to have in the previous sonnets, has been abandoned in this sonnet. Here the poet seems to have got a better idea in preserving his friend's beauty through his verse. Verse means poetry here. V-E-R-S-E. Eternity is the general theme of the poem. The tone of the sonnet is endearing, and the poet is trying to convince the readers of the eternal beauty. Eternal means everlasting beauty of his young friend. Written in typical Shakespearean sonnet format, Sonnet 18 has 14 lines of iambic pentameter. Yes, meter and rhyme scheme would be explained later on, with a rhymed couplet at the end. Iambic pentameter is a type of metrical line most commonly used in traditional English poetry and verse drama, consisting of 3 quatrains, as I earlier mentioned. It has a rhyme scheme of AB, AB, C D C D E F E F G G, like all the other Shakespearean sonnets. Figurative language is used throughout the sonnet to give an in-depth view of the speaker's feelings and love for his beloved. Metaphor is the main literary device used in the sonnet 18. The poet has compared his beloved's beauty with that of the summer in different ways. He has also personified objects of nature and death for poetic effect. Metaphor means an implied comparison where the word like is not used. When we say you are brave like a lion, it is a simile, but when we say you are a brave lion, it is a metaphor. So keep this in mind when we do this poem. And personification I will explain when the time comes. First two lines, let me read. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate. William Shakespeare opens the poem with a question addressing his friend. Yeah, this sonnet is unconventional in the sense, not only this sonnet, all of his sonnets addressed to his friend W.H. are unconventional in the sense that they are addressed to his male friend, not to his beloved female. So, shall I compare thee to a summer's day? He asks. The speaker is in confusion whether he should compare the young man's beauty with that of summer or not. Summer, remember, the summers in India are unlike the summers of Britain. It is actually too cold in London or Britain all the time, and the summers are a very pleasant times. But in India, summer is always associated with too much of heat and sultry weather. But it was not so in Britain. It is not so in Britain because summer is always associated with pleasantness. And then he drops the idea as he believes that his friend is too perfect to be compared with summer. In the next line, he emphasizes that his dear friend is more lovely, thou means you, more lovely and more temperate than the summer. Whereas the summer is extreme, with its harsh days, his lovely beauty is gentler and more restrained than the summer. Let me go on to the next two lines. Rough winds do shake the darling buds of me, and summer's lease hath all too short a date. The speaker has personified summer here. Personification means something which is not a person or a human being is given the quality of a person or a human being. Summer is not a human being. Summer is not a man, but summer is personified. Trees can be personified. Any concrete or abstract idea can be personified. Any concrete object or an abstract idea like beauty, youth, death can be personified. When the qualities of a human being is conferred to something which is not human is known as personification. He says that the violent summer winds are a threat to the beautiful new flower buds that popped up in the early summer. He argues that summer doesn't last very long. It will end, and it is only for a short time, short period. The summer must abide by the agreements made to the weather. That is, it depends on condition. Its time is limited. The pleasant weather cannot last very long, but he wants his friend's beauty to last eternally forever. Sometimes, next two lines, sometimes too hot the eye of heaven shines, and often is his gold complexion dimmed. As summer is personified, I told you. The poet says that sometimes the sun, the eye of heaven means the sun is here compared to the eye of heaven, is too hot and sometimes too dimmed because it is covered by clouds. So the poet refers to the sun as the eye of heaven and the golden face of the sun as his gold complexion. The poet is praising the beauty of his beloved friend indirectly by showing us the shortcomings of the otherwise beautiful summer season, which can be too hot or can be made dull due to the clouds. But he says his friend's beauty is perfect. And every fair, next two lines, and every fair from fair sometime declines by chance or nature's changing course untrimmed. Fair here means not complexion, here it means beauty. So everything which is beautiful has to lose its beauty sometime by chance, by coincidence, by chance, or by nature's changing course untrimmed. Nature, which moves in cycles, in seasons, which cannot be turned away. Here the speaker says that everything changes with time. Even the most beautiful things fade and lose their charm. He says that all the beautiful things, that is every fair, will eventually become less beautiful, declines from the previous state of beauty from fair. This degradation, this downfall happens by chance or by the rule of nature, which remains unmodified, untrimmed. Here the word untrimmed may also be taken as untrimmed sails on a ship. It explains that nature is a ship with sails which aren't adjusted according to the course of the wind for a better course. Let me go on to the next lines. But thy eternal summer shall not fade, nor lose possession of that fair thou owest. Though the beauty of things decline with time, the beauty of youth of Shakespeare's friend, that is his beloved friend, will not degrade, will not be destroyed. The beloved summer, that is his happy summer days, his youth, his beauty, is eternal, everlasting, and will never fade of its charm, nor will the beauty of his friend, fair thou owest, ownest, which you own, which you have, owest, or otherwise interpreted by many as ownest, conveyed the idea that beauty is something which is borrowed from nature and it must be paid back as time goes by. From this line, the tone of the poem has changed. Through lines 1 to 8, the poet has been pointing out the limitations of summer, and now he started praising his friend's beauty directly. Nor shall death brag thou wanderest in his shade, when in eternal lines to time thou growest. Death, which is personified, I told you, death is not a human being, but the qualities of a human being is conferred upon death, and we should imagine death as a human being who is bragging, who is shouting and calling the man under his shade, under his darkness, that is, the man should die. The speaker, the death will not be able to boast or brag or shout, seeing the lover wandering under its shade. The speaker personifies death here. He opines that although death has always had an upper hand over life, the beauty of his friend will live in his poem, eternal lines, through eternity. To time thou growest. The death will never be able to lay hands on his beloved, as he is immortal. Death is shown as someone who can brag about the souls he has taken to the darkness, that is underworld, in his shade, because after death everything is dark. But he won't be able to take his friend under his shade or darkness, because his friend is going to live eternally in the poem. So long as men can breathe or eyes can see, so long lives this, and this gives life to thee. Here, these two last lines are couplets, and here William Shakespeare makes a prediction that this poem about his beloved's beauty will be acclaimed throughout the ages till men live on this earth. As long as life will go on, this poem will be read by men and women, and through his poem, his love will also live. Let me just tell you a bit about the rhyme scheme so that you will be able to understand the next poems easily. The first line, please note, ends with summer's day. Mark it as small a. Next line is temperate. Mark it as B because it does not match the sound of day. The next line is May, which matches with day. So again write A, B and A again. Then the fourth line, date, ends with date with matches with temperate. So write it as B. Okay, similarly for the three quatrains, shines matches with declines, that is C, C. Dimmed matches with untrimmed, D, D. Okay, so A, B, A, B, C, D, C, D. And the third quatrain, fade, then fade, E. Ovest, F. Shade again matches with fade, so it is E. And growest matches with ovest, so it is F. So E, F, E, F. A, B, A, B, C, D, C, D, E, F, E, F. And the couplet, both the words at the end of the lines match. C and D. D means you. C and D match. The sounds are matching. So they are E, F, E, F, G, G. G, G. So the rhyme scheme of the poem, of all the sonnets of Shakespeare, is this. A, B, A, B, E, F, E, F, C, D, A, B, A, B, C, D, C, D, E, F, E, F, and G, G. Okay. So this is the rhyme scheme for the 14 lines. I hope you have tried to understand this poem. We will try to make it more clear in the next sonnet.